Greetings and salutations, everybody. It's me, Robert Phoenix, back with another edition of the Astro Weather. And Miss Peachy, there she is, waiting for her curtain call, the Astro Weather cat. That's right. What's happening out there? What's happening in there? We have the start of a new Chinese Lunar New Year. It is the snake. A powerful year that promotes transformation, the shedding of skin, the letting go of old ways. Also, we are in a 9-year, 2025 is a 9-year, and it is a consonant theme, 9, surrender, letting go and letting God. That is the theme of our star of the day today, which who's a very interesting character and was a major influence on a number of people in terms of his spiritual, quote unquote, spiritual work. We'll find out more about him later. But in the meantime, let's just go through some familiar faces and names. We got DJ MC who checked in at 1:25 a.m. just after I booked the show. Brandy Herrera, 36 in Apple Valley, and it is my 55th belly button day. Uh-oh. We got a birthday for Brandy Herrera. How about that? Well, you know what happens around these parts. You got a birthday song. All right, so let me see if we can do something here for our friend Brandy. Here we go. I got just the thing for you, Brandy. We are queuing it up. Oh, and it's Sandra Wells' birthday too. We got an Aquarian extravaganza. All right, how about that? Let me get the earbuds in so I can enjoy some of this. I think we're going to go. I think this is good. I think this is good. It's happening. Let's see. It's happening in Kentucky. And I know Sandra's in Indiana, which, you know, is not that far from Kentucky if you really think about it. So we're going to do 2 birthdays with 1 birthday song. Now, you have to remember, I've never seen this, nor have I heard it. So I'm going purely on instinct here. Right? This is just fit and feel. So here we go. This is for the 2 Aquarian ladies, and we're going to get into the Oriya belly dance here at a birthday party in Louisville, Kentucky. You said belly, you get belly. Look at that. Man, that guy got a lot of birthday dancing out of that, huh? Look at that. Let's see. We got any other belly dance birthdays? Here we go. Here's another one. Since we're on a roll, this is from Malaysia. Here we go. Let's check this out. Oh, you're not getting any video? Oh my God. Oh. Well, we got to do it all over again. Jeez, man, you guys are missing out. That is some of the hottest shit I've seen. And the transition's a little rough there. Let's get back to it though, because we got two birthdays, and I think this video represents the dual power of talented bellies. So this is the belly dance for birthday party, and this is the Elsa dance from Malaysia. All right, get ready to shake your belly. Here we go. All right. Now that is a birthday celebration. Am I right? That is some birthday get down right there. Yeah. I want the Chippendale dancers. Belly's not the only thing shaking. That's right. Play the Viking one again for Odin's sake. Nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. We're gonna leave on that little spicy dance duo. I hope you ladies liked it. You're Aquarians. You're different. You get a different kind of birthday. I remember as a young fellow, the first stirrings of my loins came when I saw a belly dance on TV. I was like, ooh, I like that. I like that. That was a very exciting vision for a young man. Let's put it that way. Ah, recovering from my workout last night. Man, this trainer that I've hired is good. This guy's good. So I'm getting to the gym at least 3 times a week, 2 times with the trainer on top of my own workout. And I got to tell you, it's working. I'm breaking through the crustal fascia that has become encased and sedentary in my body. Right? I mean, because I've been doing like upper body workouts and leg workouts, which is fine, but getting in and breaking down, connecting like the shoulder blade and the middle of the back and the lower part of the back and stretching and getting in there, man, it's just been a real revelation. And I do think if you have the ability to invest in yourself, right, that's always a good thing to do. And so far, so good. Hopefully, 6 months from now, I'll be able to do a cartwheel. No, no, I think that's a bit. That is a bit ambitious, but you never know. You never know. All right, let's get into the weather. Yeah, we're 8:12. We're into the weather already. We did 2 birthdays. Feeling very economical today. There we go. We can see the first. The Chinese New Year starts on the first new moon in February. And I think it's a really interesting kind of new moon to be a part of. Right? It's not the Capricorn new moon. It's not the Pisces new moon. It is the Aquarian new moon, which means it's experienced by everyone. Right? It is a collective, it is a group experience. And I think the Chinese knew a little bit about Western astrology along with their version of it. Of course, the snake is the sign of Taurus in Western astrology. So it is a earthy, it's a wood year, right? It's a wood year. And the wood snake, which conjures up some very interesting imagery if you can let your mind go into those places. But yeah, so it's also the first new moon of a period where Pluto has gone into Aquarius. This is the first new moon of Pluto in Aquarius. We already saw the first conjunction with the sun on the inauguration, which was a scant 9 days ago. Right. And now we have the first new moon. Today is going to be very interesting. This is the day that I was talking about where we have all this Aquarian energy lined up, starting with Pluto, Mercury, Sun, Moon, Ceres, part of fortune. And look, I'm going to talk about Trump again on 15 minutes. Because he is on a rampage. So the image that I have for Trump is it's him as Conan, the barbarian in Washington, D.C. Because this is what's happening in the first 9 days of Trump outstripped the first 9 months of Trump in 2016. It's a good thing. I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. And one of the things that we have to also balance out and keep an eye on is, yeah, it's great that finally somebody in Washington who has managed to somehow overcome the resistance. And the resistance is still there. Don't kid yourself. Letitia James now is suing Trump because he's cutting a lot of these government programs. I don't really think the one thing that they could do theoretically is slow the roll, right? And then just keep kicking this thing up to the higher courts and eventually goes to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court says, well, you can do that, right? So what Trump is doing right now is he is dismantling the Great Society. he is dismantling not everything, but close to everything that shitbag Lyndon Johnson did while he was president after the death of John F. Kennedy. This is a major, major deconstructive moment. And so the entitlements are part of it. But also what he's doing now is he's smoking out the NGOs because they're not going to be getting that money. USAID, they're losing money. They're losing a lot of their infrastructure. So this is very significant, right? And so on the one hand, this is all part of the Aquarian algorithm. On the one hand, theoretically, Trump is returning power to the people. This is theoretically, right? What people have to, I think, really take stock of is that while this can be good overall for the country, in terms of kind of rebalancing something that's been wildly out of balance for a long time, the most spiritual kind of understanding around this is that, number one, Trump is still a man. He's not a god, although sometimes he kind of comes off like one. Trump is still a man, not a god. And our experience here in this realm is not political. If you were to sit down and talk with a Christian, a real Christian, right, they would say that politics is downstream from Jesus Christ, and that Jesus Christ is the sacred and the religious law that they follow, and they don't follow any man, but they follow the spirit of Jesus Christ, right? So that's just one version of this. But there's another version, right, where and I'm doing this thing on the harmonic convergence. I'm working on this piece, and I want to put it up on Locals. I'm about 3/4 of the way through with it. But somewhere along the way, right, we got sucked into the political vortex, and everything became political. And for good reason, because for a long time we were asleep at the wheel, and we had all these people that were doing all these things behind the scenes. And when it was all said and done, it was like we were 3/4 of the way to hell. And so people finally wake up and they say, well, we can't have this. This is not going to fly. And so they became involved in the political process. And then they identified most closely with the people who theoretically are there to serve their interests and needs, i.e. Donald Trump, MAGA, etc., right? Nothing wrong with that. But it's important to understand that we are also beyond that, right? That we are not defined by our political affiliation, that there is something inside of us that transcends all of that. And some people will say, well, this is, the understanding of the divine in each and every one of us. And, that's true, right? I mean, I believe that's true. And by the way, I still don't believe everybody has a soul, but that's a different topic for another day. So I think it's important, because when we think about all this Aquarius, right, we think about like the New Age. The New Age was a very popular concept, specifically during like part of the 70s, 80s, and the 90s. Like the 90s are really peak New Age. I remember seeing Barbara Marciniak at the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, kind of peak New Age experience. And that's when people were really into tuning into their own internal guidance, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse, but at least they were attempting to establish an inner authority that was connected to an emergent sense of something inside of them coming alive, right? Versus something external that they're defining themselves by. And so somewhere along the way, and probably rightfully so, we kind of moved away from that, right? We moved, it was sort of like we went to the mountaintop and, we theoretically got our own Ten Commandments. Then we came back down a little bit and said, okay, well, why don't we stay here? Because, we can manage this from here, and manage it from here is somehow more impactful, right? Like if we protest loud enough or vote hard enough, the damage that's been done by other humans can be addressed and potentially undone. And I think we kind of are at that place now. But remember, that's not really where we started. That's not where most of us started. Where most of us started was this sense and this idea that there was this emergent consciousness that wanted to come through us, and for us to be aware of it, and for us to be aware of it in everybody else. Right? This idea of the living, breathing God in and through all of our affairs. And when you go into that space, like, it can be quite miraculous. Now, some people can get very delusional around something like that, unless you have some real guidelines to kind of keep you in the lines here, right? But that's where we started. And so when we look at all this Aquarian energy that's lined up, right? On the one hand, it's great that, these things are happening. Of course, on the other side, we have the mRNA, and we have Larry Ellison, and Trump is basically telling Israel to drop the Palestinians off in Egypt and in Lebanon. Well, it's not Europe. Just go drop them off. Let Egypt and Lebanon take him, and let Jarrett get in there and, redevelop that thing. Right? Like, that's not really what people who are connected really want to hear. Unfortunately, it's the wages of war, right? And this is what we're seeing. It's the wages of war. It's about the conquest and the acquisition of land and territory, by the way, in which this country is still now engaged in as well, right? So, on this new moon, right, I think it's important to remember, this kind of, I wouldn't call it transcendent, but it's partially transcendent. It's partially transformational, right? It's this thing that we were awakening to at a certain point in time. And even that got hijacked by people like Oprah Winfrey and Deepak Chopra and Barbara Marx Hubbard and, Marianne Williamson, the gatekeepers, right? People who for a period of time felt like they were able to plug into the gnosis of the moment and then disseminate it to others. Well, it's all inside of you, right? It's all inside of you. So today is a reminder, in this new moon, that you can rededicate yourself to understanding your place in the cosmos in a unique way that connects you to other unique people. Nobody has to suffer, right? Nobody is really diminished, right? Somebody's really good at this, and somebody's really good at that, and somebody's really good at this, and somebody's really good at that. And I've used the light bright model. You've got all these different lights in the light bright, and they're all lit and they're all creating a part of the picture. And that is what the Aquarian age looks like. Everybody has a purpose, and everybody's purpose is interconnected. And sometimes we got to work it out because this is the emergent social order. And other times it just fits, and we find people that are on our team. And when we do that, it's like, okay, good. I found you, you found me, I found you, you found me. Good. This is how this thing works, right? So I'm just throwing that out there because on the one hand, we have this, emergent political order, which is establishing itself very quickly. And to Trump's credit, a lot of it has to do with the Vox Populi, the people, right? The group that Trump stood on in order to get elected. And he's delivering. How much it delivers, how far it delivers, we'll find out. So in this regard, yes, it does impact the people. Yes, it does impact society. Yes, it does impact the collective. And it is only a portion of it, right? It's only a portion of it. And the thing about Aquarian energy, again, is that, everybody has a unique divine spark. And this is today, this is what this is about. is nurturing your unique and divine spark. You want to nurture it. It's like if you have something, and it's not egotistical, it just is, right? And when you are in a place of isness, then you're doing your business. You can write that down. All right, so that's our little Aquarian patch right here. And guess what? Some of this is coming in and starting to trine Jupiter. We got the sun and the moon trining Jupiter. Jupiter's retrograde, but it's still Jupiter. And it's expanding on these ideas. So we are in prime synchronistic territory today. To me, Gemini and Aquarius are the two signs that fire on all cylinders when it comes to synchronicities. So today is one of those heavy sync days. Lots of communication. And as Mercury moves forward, that communication is just going to get more pronounced, right? What is it? It's at 2 degrees. By the time it gets up 9, 10 degrees, like you'll be having multiple conversations with multiple meaning. And, there are going to be moments where you're not going to be, it's like, can you fucking believe this? Like what's happening here in this moment? And all these layers are stacking on top of one another. And who doesn't love it? Who doesn't love a good synchronicity? Especially when it's got like meat on its bones, because not all synchronicities are created equal, right? So we're coming into a very interesting phase here where air is the ruler of the day and things happen very quickly with air, lots of communication. And the good part about it is that there is not a lot of distortion. With the exception of the retrograde with Jupiter, it's about to go direct, right? So with the exception of the retrograde with Jupiter, and that could be reconnecting or realigning communication that, maybe there were some things that were misunderstood or were not communicated clearly enough. You go back and you can readdress it, right? I think this is the energy that's like, one of the things I do like about Aquarius, and I like a lot about Aquarius, because people say, well, you hate Aquarians. I don't hate Aquarians. I think they're very interesting people, right? The one thing that Aquarians are at times is that they are reactionary. And they're reactionary through their revolutionary spirit and rebellion. It's the way it is, right? It's part of who they are. But that said, right, it's like when you get into Aquarius and you get into Gemini and you line these planets up, it's like the human switchboard. And so our ability to communicate is vastly improved exponentially. We're able to take in more information. This is kind of one of those moments where I talk about machine learning. We have all these inputs. There are two kinds of paths in life, right? And they're not necessarily one better than the other. There's the path of silence. And silence is meditation, and you clear your mind, and you become more focused and intentional through daily practice of meditation. The other path is the immersion through stimuli. And not everybody can handle the immersion through stimuli path. Meaning you always have these inputs. And some people will say, well, this is just a distraction. And I would disagree with that. I think some people are able to take in large amounts of information and synthesize that information. And it may not be as quiet and peaceful and intentional as the meditative path, but it has its own use, right? And so there's a lot of information in the air. Aquarius is the information age. And we are kicking it off today with this new moon. And there's a good spirit. Find the good spirit. Share the good news. That's a very Christian sort of thing. All right, let's drop down. Speaking of Christian, we got Saturn, we got Venus, we got Neptune, we got the true node. So we're in this part of the zodiac, right, where we're deep into, again, what we would call the collective unconscious, right? We're in this part of the zodiac where the individual self is disseminated amongst the many, or the individual self is disseminated amongst the Godhead, right? Because that's what Pisces represents, is the Godhead. And Pisces being a mutable sign means that there are conditions that are changeable, right? It's not constant, and even though, we have some fixity here with Saturn and Venus, Pisces is a rising tide. Right? So it's a very interesting period of time. And, we're coming up on that February 28th, about a month from now, right? Where all these planets are going to be in front of the sun. We're getting there. We're really getting there, right? The only one that's going to be behind is going to be Pluto. And that's also when Mars finally goes direct in Cancer. So we're in this period of deep kind of collective archetypal awareness and consciousness. The individual dissolves into something beyond the individual, right? But this isn't, and this is an interesting term, the transhuman. And, the thing that we've been conditioned to think about with the transhuman and transhumanism is that it has to do with, altering and augmenting our physical body, through chips and neural implants and whatever, right? But transhuman has a completely different definition than just, this kind of synthetic hybrid. Transhuman means to go beyond being human. And so again, if we go back here, right, we talk about the political awareness and the political engagement and having to almost go backwards, from Aquarius to Capricorn, which we did. We were really drawn into the political maelstrom with Pluto and Capricorn for 15 years. But now we're coming back into this more, I don't like to use the word new agey, but you almost can't escape it with Aquarius because, like, again, when Trump was inaugurated, Pluto and the sun were conjunct, and it was the dawn of a new day. This was literally a new age upon us, and it coincided with Trump's inauguration. It was so. We'll look back on that time, and we'll, at a certain point historically, we'll see how auspicious it was. And I'm not here again. I'm not a total pro-Trump guy, but I'm also not anti. I see Trump as being an archetype, and being an archetype, he will, exist in the realm of myth and mythology. But even archetypes can be very human and have their very flawed human sides. And this is one of the things that binary thinkers get caught up in, orange man bad, or he's the MAGA savior, right? Well, he's probably both. But then again, he's also something else, right? And he's an archetype. Donald Trump is a trickster. He's also a disruptor. He takes on these almost kind of mythical roles because of how his chart is set up, right? Sun Uranus in the 10th house, Mars and Leo on the ascendant. Right? Very powerful placements for an individual. So, again, I just want to stress, right, that even though we're going through a lot of these changes that can impact us on a political level, just remember that that's not the totality of who we are, right? We're not just happy little serfs waiting around for somebody to come and flip the switch and rebalance. Yeah, that's nice, right? But the eternal you, the immortal you, the spiritual you, always existed prior to that. And, let's hope and feed the intention that it will exist after that as well, right? So it's important to have this kind of balance and to remember that at a certain point that there, for better or worse, whether it was a false awakening or an incomplete awakening, we were a culture that was invested in that in a lot of ways, right? I mean, look at how far yoga has come. Like, there's yoga studios and almost every corner, right? And that all started, in the beginning, the middle part of the 1960s, when you had these guys going to India bringing yoga back and sort of kickstarting this idea of the quote unquote new age, right? And then with the Piscean material, the idea here is to, kind of float and, dissolve part of the ego and merge with part of your higher self, right? Which isn't necessarily indistinct from your ego. Like your ego can lead you to your higher self. And it may sound like a damnation or a blasphemy, but it's true. Right? What does the ego do? It brings you experience. That's what it does. It brings you experience. That's all it does. Sometimes the experience can be quite good. And sometimes the experience is something you learn from, right? But ultimately, if you are a true mystic, it's all grist for the mill, and everything gets you closer to this idea that you are an earthly representation of God. It's in some ways it's very simple, right? And if you lived in a hermetic life and a community that just supported that and everybody practiced it, it could probably work, although you do work out a lot of human stuff in communities. But I think it's more exciting and interesting when you have to deal with the compression of 3D and do your best to understand these things. So today is a very interesting day, right? It's a very interesting day. And can we shed the skin of being so attached to the political outcome? Even though today I'll talk a lot about the political outcome, but that's a different story. Mars is over here at 21. Remember, it is going to station at 17 degrees. We're only 4 degrees now. That Mars is just moving. It's that slow crab, just moving backwards. It's kind of like if you put a crab in a refrigerator, it just slows down. It's just kind of moving backwards real slow. But it is in trine with Neptune, has been for a while. It is in trine with Saturn, and it is in trine with Venus. And so these Mars trines are quite good. The reversal of Mars is, you're trying to kind of retrofit some of these experiences you've had in your life recently, but they're not in conflict with, finding a deeper emotional connection. And maybe with Mars retrograde, you want to be more protective, right? Maybe your feelings are involved. You want to be more protective. And that's not out of the question with the Mars retrograde. But when it moves forward, there's a sense that, okay, maybe I can come out of my shell a little bit, and maybe I can begin to trust again a bit more. So this is building a bridge towards trust. I like the elements today. I think this is, if we're going to go like a 1 to 10 day astrologically, today is about an 8-5. The only square that we really have going on is the square with Jupiter. It's Jupiter Saturn. That's been ongoing. That's all about budgetary concerns. And then the Mars square with Chiron, which we've had ongoing as well. And again, that's prickly feelings and feeling wounded and hurt, right? And there's a lot of potential healing energy that can really, really help with that. And it also feels to me like this is from, the big picture perspective. These are people that are not happy with the current migration situation, right? Because like Mars retrograde is like sending them back. It's like Cancer's the home. The Mars retrograde, send them back. Send them back. Now, I know that sounds pretty cruel and, heartless and cold-blooded, but these people came here under conditions that were rigged to the point where they were almost illegal. Like we had never experienced anything like this since the inception. Incrementally, it's Johnson who starts to open the gates, right? And then it's Bush who comes in and opens them even more. Those are the two biggest culprits in terms of loosening the opening the floodgates of immigration, right? So those two people, both of whom, by the way, have a connection with Texas. Oh, isn't that interesting? Gee, maybe we need more legal aliens to come work in Texas and work in the fields and do all these things at a cheaper rate. I bet George and LBJ needed a little extra farm labor, a little extra ranch labor. But this is where people are, are a little butthurt with this Chiron Mars square, and you're seeing people get up in arms about, the relocation of people from other countries with that Mars retrograde going back. All right. Let's talk about our True Hemp Science star of the day. Here we go. Let's bring the banner up. There it is. Okay. And let's let us move into our True Hemp Science star of the day. I think that's it. Yes, it is. All right. So, True Hemp Science. You guys who watch the show every day, you know the drill. You go there, you spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, you'll get the goodie bag. And if for whatever reason, and it does happen, the goodie bag falls through the cracks, just let Chris know. Because sometimes we're human, right? We're not automatons. And say, hey, Chris, I didn't get my goodie bag. Oh, no problem. I'll send it out. It happened recently. And what happened? Well, Chris sent the goodie bag back out. The goodie bag is your order within an order, and you'll get some things in there you'll absolutely love. All right, but True Hemp Science is your one-stop shop for all things CBD, organically sourced, and then meticulously crafted. You will get some of the finest CBD, CBDG, CGA, THC. The blends are all in there. And people say, well, it's a little more expensive than other CBD. Well, there's a reason why, right? There's a reason why. There's a reason why some cars are more expensive than other cars. There's a reason why a Mercedes is more expensive than a Chevy Volt, because of the quality of the build. And that's what you're paying for with True Hemp Science. It's the quality. You can use less of it because of the quality, right? So just keep that in mind. Now, $150 more gets you free shipping, and there's always a 30-day money-back guarantee. All right, truehempscience.com, 15MAINS is your code. Jump on it and improve the quality of your life. All right, let's talk about our star of the day. It is Emanuel Swedenborg. Now, some of you may ask yourself, who the hell is Emanuel Swedenborg? He's one of the most important people in the history of religion and faith. He's a very interesting character. And what did I do? I did this thing. Hold on. I got to get the right one. Yeah, this is it. So Swedenborg, as you can tell, now we're using the Julian calendar here. Swedenborg is born January 29th, 1688, using the Julian calendar. And he's born into a family that his father is already headed down this path as a minister. He comes from a mining family, right? So they're kind of well off, right? He's no peasant. But his father is very interested in uh, religion, Christianity, but he's also kind of interested in the transcendent nature of Christianity. And young Swedenborg follows in the footsteps of his father. Now, where he differs from his father slightly is that not only is he a theologian, but he's also an inventor, right? He's incredible. He's really incredible. Like, I'll show you this. So he's like working on flying machines. So there's a bit of Da Vinci in Swedenborg. I guess that's his summer house. What a humble summer house, right? Swedenborg is a fascinating character in that he's very hard to pin down. He's a mathematician, he's a scientist, he's a futurist, and he is also a minister. Now, what happens with Swedenborg is he starts to have visitations. And these go on for a long period of time. And now there are a number of books that Swedenborg has written about his experiences of being able to travel to both heaven and hell. And he's initiated into this transcendent world by Jesus himself. So when I pulled up this chart, I'm like, where do we track the otherworldly part of Swedenborg? Like, where does it come from? Well, first of all, he's got that Sag rising at 27 degrees. Now, at that time, the galactic center was not at 27 degrees. But 27 degrees Sagittarius is incredibly philosophical, right? It is deeply philosophical. And, when you get into Sagittarius and the ninth house, I call it the mind of God. So here, he has Saturn in the ninth house, which to me is like the high priest, right? He's a minister. He's a man of the cloth. He's the authority of the ninth house. He's a spiritual teacher with Saturn up here. And what's interesting is that his Saturn is squaring Pluto, and it's also coming in here, and it's squaring Jupiter. When you get into these squares, right, what happens? Something has to give. So Jupiter in Capricorn, right, which is squaring off against his Saturn, is trying to crack that Saturn open and to make it more amenable to possibility, right? And the Pluto-Saturn square is like the pressure, like the social pressure to conform, the social pressure to just stay in your lane and just be a good minister, right? But also when you look at this whole idea of traveling between heaven and hell, right? Like Jupiter and Pluto do play a bit of a role here. Pluto is the underworld, and Jupiter represents sort of the smiling face of Jove, right? When you think of Jupiter, you think of Jove. It's Jovian, it's jolly, it's big, right? It's expansive. And so Saturn is the mediator between these two worlds. But then he has Mercury in Aquarius. Again, now we're talking about movement, right? Now we're talking about, this idea that Mercury, which is like Hermes and, the messenger of the gods and moves between worlds, like Mercury, can kind of play this role here, especially with the opposition to Pluto, right? And being on the other end of this, kind of intense, deep, profound sort of visitation energy, right? Which can theoretically, disrupt his world, elevate her down. And he has a lot of strength because he has his sun Saturn trine. So this is a man of belief and conviction. And then down here, he has all this primacy, right? Mars and Aries. And what is Mars doing? Mars is trining his ascendant. and it's energy, right? And it's direct, right? This is the thing about Aries. It's direct. There's no intermediaries. And of course, he has, this crazy moon, Uranus, Chiron conjunction in Taurus, right? And, and all these planets now are starting to kind of move in and then get into this sextile with Jupiter in his chart and open everything up, right? And that Uranus-Jupiter trine, I'm not sorry, not sextile trine. The Uranus-Jupiter trine is a fascinating trine, right? It gives the individual a hint of genius and thinking outside the box and being able to, improvise and just engage in the world in a non-traditional way. Now, he's got this kind of semi-grand cross, so it's not that he didn't, have to suffer the slings and arrows of other people, cracking down on him and saying, well, you're a heretic, because he had to answer those charges of being a heretic. But he's a very interesting figure. William Blake loved Swedenborg. And the reason why he loves Swedenborg is because Swedenborg is a spiritualist. He is not content to just, rest on the laurels of scripture and be a dogmatist. Swedenborg is a spiritualist. And so for Swedenborg, it is contact with the divine, which is proof that God exists, right? So he has this Sun Pluto in conjunct, and it's very powerful, right? It's a very, very powerful in conjunct. Pluto's over here in the back end, and eventually it's going to get his son's attention. It's like, hey, look, there's something else going on here, and you're about to experience it. It's going to change your life. You will never be the same afterwards, right? Like, that's the nature of Pluto. So William Blake loves Swedenborg, and he plays a huge role in the development of Blake's sort of proto-Gnostic cosmology. Inside of Blake, you'll also find Dante and John Milton and the poet Virgil. Swedenborg, Dante, Virgil, and Milton play characters in the Blakean cosmology. And Swedenborg, in a lot of ways, him and Dante seem to be the most favored by Blake. Blake loves Milton, but ultimately he chides Milton for being a moralist. Kind of interesting. So there's a day where Swedenborg has the visitation, like his first visitation, and it's on Easter Sunday, and it's in 1744. So I decided to dial it up. I'm like, okay, can we find evidence of a visitation at that time? There's some interesting things going on in this chart. One of which is Jupiter just coming up into his ninth house, which is the house of higher consciousness and the mind of God. What is it doing? It's trining his sun. Okay. That's been going on for a while, but that's going to be one of those, it's going to be one of those aspects that's going to be, pretty interesting in terms of expansion, right? From the higher mind coming down, it's like, oh, look at this. And again, it's Jupiter. It's one of the, it's like you have the Saturnian aspect of God and you have the Jupiterian aspect of God. And so in this regard, it's expanding his awareness of the higher mind. And look down here, the Mars-Mars conjunction to me is really fascinating because, again, what does that represent? It represents the emanation of direct experience. Right. So on this day specifically, we got a Mars-Mars conjunction. The third house is communication. And what is it doing? Both of these Marses are just running right up and hitting his ascendant in Sagittarius. Direct contact, direct transmission, direct energy. All right. So what else do we have here? We got Pluto, transiting Pluto. Well, it's in Scorpio. Look at that. Transiting Pluto's in Scorpio. What's it doing? Over here, he's got his Chiron, Uranus, and Taurus, right? So again, we have this very intense energy, right? And you know what's interesting is if you go in and let's say you're having a Uranus Pluto opposition in your chart, and this happens somewhere in your roughly your mid 50s, right? If you went into astro.com and you read the definition of that, you would see that they would talk about how there's this potential for this kind of world splitting ability to have some kind of experience which completely changes, you know, your point of view and your understanding of the world. Well, there it is, right? Pluto Uranus opposition, right there, right? It's like this again. It's this transformational kind of lightning bolt that brings this whole new level of awareness. So I can clearly see that this day has the potential for him to experience, you know, the visitation, right? This is when theoretically Jesus came and made himself known to him, right? Uranus Sun conjunction, like it's been on the, you know, and that's there for a while, but it's been, you know, cooking and percolating. For me, the transit that really gets my attention is this Mars conjunction. You know, we say, well, that happens every 2 years. Well, it does, but you know, 2 years before that, I don't think Pluto was in opposition to Uranus. You know, Jupiter wasn't, you know, coming down from the ninth house, right? Which is the sort of the height of the chart. Again, the ninth house is the upper room. It is the higher mind. It is higher consciousness. And Jupiter is here delivering a message. So I do think that, you know, and even with Chiron conjuncting Pluto in his chart, like, you know, it's like, can I believe this? Can I deal with it? And if I share it, how's it going to go down with other people? Right? Because it's a risk, and Chiron is a risk. So, you know, I wanted to see if there was a there, and this was the day that he got his marching orders. And then after that, he's like off, right? He's off writing all these books about, and he believed, by the way, this is important. He believed the revelation had already happened. He believed the revelation had already happened. And there are other people who are of the same mind, right? And that for the last 200 years, we've been in the little season. So maybe Swedenborg was right about that. Anyway, he's a fascinating character. You could probably get all of his books for free online, PDF. You know, they're written in language that I think has been moderately updated. So you may have to, you know, translation from Dutch to English, and you may have to work through some of it, but it's free, right? And he really truly is one of the spiritual masters of the Western tradition. All right, headed over to 15. The links are in the show description. Don't forget to hit like. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Share the show with friends. If you like it, share it with friends. It's a nice place to hang out. They're good people in chat. What else? Oh, I will be on with Giuseppe, Dave, and Russ Winter today. And this is where I get to up my score with the ADL, no doubt. So come on over to the G-Man's World and check that out. That's from noon to 2 Central Standard Time. And I think that's it. Come join Locals. I'm going to be putting this article out on the timeline shift of 1988. And I've been working on that. Very interesting information. So if some of you were really captivated by that story and shared some of your stories in chat yesterday here, not chat, but the comment section, which I thought was really cool. So that's coming over to Locals as well. That's it. Treat each other well. God bless. Love you all. Take care. Bye for now.